the Second Amendment should be repealed, former Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens says. A former Supreme Court judge says that it's time to repeal the Second Amendment, a NRAer's worst nightmare. Former Supreme Court judge is calling for the repeal of the Second Amendment. Former Justice John Paul Stevens, appointed in 1975 by a Republican president, Gerald Ford, but emerged as one of the court's liberal voices until his retirement in 2010, pointed to the recent nationwide protests for gun control as a sign that America was ready for such a major change. That support is a clear sign to lawmakers to enact legislation prohibiting civilian ownership of semi-automatic weapons, increasing the minimum age to buy a gun from 18 to 21 years old, and establishing more comprehensive background checks on all purchasers of firearms, Stevens wrote in the New York Times. But the demonstrators should seek more effective and more lasting reform. They should demand a repeal of the Second Amendment. After describing the Second Amendment as a relic of the 18th century, Stevens said the notion that it protects unlimited gun ownership rights was a modern concept. For over 200 years after the adoption of the Second Amendment, it was uniformly understood as not placing any limit on either federal or state authority to enact gun control legislation. In